Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I hope to read in the month of November 2024. And I have some books that are carrying over from previous months. So I'm going to talk about those first. There are 8 of them that I have not been able to get to from previous months. I'm also going to talk about new books that I'm adding to my list that add up to 24 books that I hope to read in the month of 2024. And 5 of those books I'm going to choose at the end of the video by picking a random letter and then picking titles that start with that letter from my Kindle backlist. So it's going to be an exciting list of books this month. And of the books that I already have on my list that I've chosen, I have realized that like almost half of them are over 500 pages long. So I have a lot of long books on my list this month. And a lot of the longer books are ones that have carried over from previous months as well. So it's taking me a while to get through them, but I'm looking forward to them. We'll see how much I can get through, especially with a Thanksgiving holiday this month. I'm hopeful that I can read a little bit more than usual. So let's start with the books that are still on my list first. There are 8 of those. The first one is Heavenly Bodies by Amani Eru. I have been kind of delaying this one because I had an audiobook that was supposed to come in that I pre-ordered. It got bumped to January. So this book is a little over 600 pages. I do want to read it by the end of the calendar year. So maybe I'll be able to get to this one in November. And just to kind of refresh you on the plot, there's a main character, Elena, and she's in a world where there are gods that watch over the world, and they're called the stars. And she has had a prophecy that promises she's going to fall for a star and it's going to kill them both. And then one descends to kind of wreak havoc on her kingdom, and she is forced to flee into a neighboring country where her enemy is. And then she is starting to get trained, I think, by this enemy to be kind of weapon. She has this magic. And the story goes on from there. So I'm looking forward to picking that up, but it's just taking me a while to get to it. The other one that's been on my list for quite some time is called The Will of the Many. This is the first book in the Hierarchy series by James Islington. It's basically the story of a boy who goes into a school, and he's there under kind of like false pretenses. He's actually trying to solve a murder. And this one is also quite lengthy, if I'm remembering it correctly. It is over 600 pages as well. So I have it on audio, and I think I've wanted to like read it while I've been listening to it. And so it's something I'm not really wanting to listen to in the background because it's a little bit more layered and detailed. So I need to kind of sit down and make a point to read that one as well. I also have several books left over from just this past October. So I had several fall themed books that I had on my list that I was not quite able to get to. 2 are part of the Sweater Weather series, which is a number of different authors writing romance-themed books. And there's one called A Not So Fictional Fall that I actually started but haven't finished yet. I think I'm about a third of the way through. And then a second one called Faking the Fall that I have not gotten to. So I was able to read 5 of those in October, and I have 2 left to finish this month. And then I also have another fall-themed book called If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. And this is a book that's, I think, like a rom-com set in the 90s. And I've been really looking forward to it, but that one is also over 500 pages long. So it will take me a little bit to finish that one. And then the remaining 3 books that are on my list that have stayed over from the previous month are the latter 3 books in the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown. There are 3 remaining books. I got through the first 3, and the remaining books are Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer. And those are also lengthy. There's a theme here. So I will have to be working my way through those as well. I do have them on audio. Okay, so the books that I have that I'm adding onto my list, and we'll see how far I can get in November, is the box set challenge that I have set for myself this month. Every month of 2024, I've been reading a box set of books that I already own. And the box set this month is called The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. And this is basically 4 novels, and then I think there is a set of like stories or short stories, and there's 2 sets of those. And so the first book in the series is called Cinder, and then there is Scarlet, Cress, and Winter, and then the shorter kind of short stories are called Fairest and Stars Above. This is a series that is basically retellings of fairy tales, but they are given kind of like a sci-fi twist. And so, for example, the first book, which I've already dipped into, Cinder, is a retelling of Cinderella, but there's like this, she's a cyborg, basically. So it's kind of fun. It's a fun little twist. I'm looking forward to this. I've heard really good things about these books, and I've been wanting to read them for a while. So those will be fun to pick up this month. I'm also wanting to pick up a trilogy of books that I have heard, again, really good things about. It is called the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. It is made up of 3 books, The Assassin's Apprentice, Royal Assassin, and Assassin's Quest. And this is a series of books that I admit I don't know a ton about. I can look up the first one just to see what we can find out about it. But basically, Robin Hobb writes like a universe of books. And this is like one of the first trilogies that like enters you into that universe. And this is like where people recommend that you start. So the first book says, in a faraway land where members of the royal family are named for the virtues they embody, one young boy will become a walking enigma. Born on the wrong side of the sheets, Fitz, son of chivalry Farseer, is a royal bastard cast out into the world, friendless and lonely. Only his magical link with animals, the old art known as the wit, gives him solace and companionship. But the wit, if used too often, is a perilous magic and one abhorred by the nobility, so when Fitz is finally adopted into the royal household, he must give up his old ways and embrace a new life of weaponry, scribing, courtly manners, and how to kill a man secretly as he trains to become a royal assassin. So this is actually a trilogy that was on my 24 books to read in 2024. I have like a number of things I've been trying to get to this year, and that list is slowly becoming smaller and smaller as I check those books off my list. So I wanted to make sure I could start that in November. I also added a couple of nonfiction books to my list. One is called Soundtracks by Jon Acuff, subtitled The Surprising Solution to Overthinking. And Jon Acuff is an author that I have read many of his past works, all nonfiction. And this is a more recent one that came out where basically he's talking about like, how do you do self-talk and not overthink things? And I am just intrigued to see kind of his thoughts on that. I also added to my list a book called Golden, The Power of Silence in a World of Noise by Justin Zorn. And as a dedicated introvert, I love reading books about silence and quiet. And so I thought I would pick that one up and see what I think of that. I also added to my list a book called Exercised by Daniel Lieberman, subtitled Why Something We Never Evolved to Do is Healthy and Rewarding. And I have been getting back into movement practices this entire year and recently started doing some running again. And this one just sounded intriguing to me. So I thought I would pick that up as well. And then the last nonfiction book on my list is a book called How Do ADHD by Jessica McCabe, and subtitled An Insider's Guide to Working with Your Brain, Not Against It. This is one of the series of books I've been reading throughout the year on neurodiversity. And I recently came across Jessica McCabe's YouTube channel of the same name and wanted to read her book as well. Okay, a few more fiction ones also on the list. I picked up Foe by Ian Reid. And this is a book that I heard about from someone on social media that was like raving about it and saying she just started it and couldn't put it down. And this is an author that you might be familiar with because he wrote a book called I'm Thinking of Ending Things that was made into a film. I have not read that book and I have not seen the film, but I know that it was something that people said was kind of just like twisty and like psychological, and you ended it and like maybe didn't fully understand what was going on. And I think Foe is kind of a similar vein. It's like, I believe, his second novel. So in this particular novel, basically there is a couple that lives outside of the city. They're kind of in a rural area. And one day this stranger shows up to their house, and he basically says that the man of the couple has been randomly selected to travel into space. There's like a resettlement situation that they're trying to do. And there's kind of this mystery of like, this guy comes in and he's like talking to this couple, and there's the female side of the couple who is not expected to go on this trip, but it's like this multi-year, like he kind of comes to them and then he doesn't come back for like another several years. So there's these like psychological dynamics of the couple, like knowing that this is coming, or that there's like the possibility of this, because he's kind of on like a short list for this, but not really like for sure that he's going to leave. So anyway, I thought I would pick that up. It's different than what I normally read. And I enjoy kind of like trying out different genres. I also added some romances to my list this month. One is called Sunlight by Devney Perry. This is the second book in the Haven River Ranch series. I read the first book called Crossroads a little bit early earlier this year. And Sunlight is basically set, I believe, in the same setting, which is the Haven River Ranch. And I'm just looking quickly to see. There's a woman who I believe comes to the ranch to work there, and Jax is the male main character, is her boss. And let's see. It's basically kind of, I don't think it's, okay. It's a pregnancy trope. So they have a one-night stand and she is pregnant and they have to navigate their relationship from there. So, okay. Then I also added to my list 2 of the next upcoming books in the Maple Hills series by Hannah Grace. The second book in the series is called Wildfire. The third book in the series is called Daydream. I have already read the first book in the series. And Wildfire, I believe, takes place at a summer camp. I think these are all college students, basically, that are having romances. The first book was a hockey romance. And then the third book, I believe, is like an athlete, nerd, kind of romance. But those have been ones that have, again, been like on my radar for a while, and I just haven't gotten to them yet. So wanted to put those on my list. And then a couple other romances I added. One is called Delicate Escape by Catherine Cowles. It is the second book in the Sparrow Falls series. I basically gulped down one of her earlier series this year where I just read like 4 or 5 books back to back. Then I started this second series, really enjoyed the first book. Delicate Escape, I think, came out just in the last couple of months. And so it's a series that she's actively writing right now. And it's basically romance suspense in a small town. And then the last romance that I added is one called When Gracie Met the Grump. It is on the backlist of Mariana Zapata, who I have just very much enjoyed her romance novels. And I didn't even look at the plot of this. I've just been slowly working my way through her backlist because I enjoy it so much. Basically what this says is Gracie, it says one of the things that of all the things that could have landed in her yard, it had to be him. For most people, finding a half-naked super being in their yard might be a dream come true. Unfortunately for Gracie, it's the exact opposite, especially when he's grouchy, rude, and shows no signs of leaving anytime soon. But when a hero of mankind needs you, you do what you have to do, even if it compromises everything you know and totally changes your life. So I trust Mariana Zapata quite a bit in terms of, like, every book I've read of hers, I've just really enjoyed. So looking forward to picking that up. And then the last couple of books on my list, I added the first book in a new series by Jenny Milchman. The book is called The Usual Silence. And this is a mystery novel that is basically about a psychologist who's haunted by childhood trauma and must unearth all that is buried in her past in this twisting lyrical novel of suspense. She treats troubled children, struggling with each case to recover from her own traumatic past, much of which she's lost to the shadows of memory. Having just set up a new kind of treatment center in the remote Adirondack wilderness, she longs to heal one patient who is a 10-year-old boy who has never spoken a word, or so his mother Louise believes. I am a sucker for like child psychologist books, so looking forward to picking that up. And then the last pre-selected book I have on my list is one called Clarence Manor by Devney Perry. And this was previously titled Ivy, and got a retitle and like a recover. I think this is, again, like part of Devney Perry's backlist. Similar to Mariana Zapata, I've been like working my way through her backlist as well. The description of this book is that there is a university called Aston University, and it has prestigious and wealthy students, but the currency on campus isn't their millions, it's their secrets. And there's 3 women living at Clarence Manor who are filthy rich in lies and deceit. 2 of the roommates have played this game for years. Some would consider them masters of a ruse. The third might be new to Aston, but she's no stranger to secrets. It says Cassia the outsider, Alora the ice princess, and Ivy the puppet master. Who is hiding the ugliest truths? We'll leave it to you to be the judge. So this is, I think, a little bit different than what I'm used to reading from Devney Perry, which is pretty much kind of like straight up romance novels. But looking forward to picking that up as well. So kind of a mishmash of genres this month. And also you can tell I'm trying to do some like cleanup of my end of the year lists of things that I'm trying to read before we get to 2025. So let me go ahead and open up my Kindle and my library, and I'm going to sort it by my lists. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is pick my random letter so that I can decide which books I'm gonna read from my Kindle backlist. All right, the letter I have chosen is F. So let me go ahead and navigate to the F books and see what I might want to pick up here. All right, so first I'm just gonna scan and see what I've got. Okay, there's a ton of good ones here. So I'm gonna start choosing what I'm gonna be reading. So the first one I wanna pick up is one called The Future by Naomi Alderman. And this is a book that is by the same person who wrote the book The Power, if you're familiar with that book. And it says there's a woman who never expected to find herself working for a powerful social media leader hell-bent on controlling everything. Now she's surrounded by mega-rich companies designing private weather, predictive analytics, and covert weaponry while spouting technological prophecy. And then there's another character who's an internet-famous survivalist who's fleeing from an assassin, and their worlds collide. Well, a few billionaires assured of their own safety lead the world to destruction. These two main characters' insatiable curiosity could lead to something beautiful or could herald the cataclysmic end of civilization. So kind of a futurist book. That sounds like it's going to be really fun. So that's going to be book number 1. The second book I'm going to pick here is one called, let's see, which one am I going to pick? I'm going to pick up a book called Folly by Laurie R. King. This is an author who has written a long-running series about Sherlock Holmes. And so this is one of her, actually it looks like it's a duology. I was going to say it's a standalone, but I think it's a duology. I have been wanting to read this actually for a long time, and I think I started it and then it didn't get very far. So basically, it says that there's a woman on the edge of sanity, on the edge of tragedy, and now on the edge of the world. She's moved to an island at the far reaches of the continent to restore the house of an equally haunted figure, her mysterious great uncle. But as her life begins to rebuild itself along with the house, his story starts to wrap around hers. Powerful forces are stirring, but she cannot see where her reality leaves off and his fate begins. So I'm going to pick up that book as well. All right, I'm also going to choose a book called The Family Game by Catherine Steadman. I've enjoyed this author. I think I've read at least one other thing by her. It says the rules are listen carefully, do your research, trust no one, and run for your life. It's the holiday season, and Harriet Reid, a novelist on the brink of literary stardom, is newly engaged to Edward, the heir of an extremely powerful family. And even though Edward has long tried to sever ties with them, news of the couple's upcoming marital bliss has the family inching back into their lives with one invite after another. And so she's drawn into this lavish world. And the father hands her a tape of a book he's been working on, and she's desperate to listen. But as she presses play, it's clear that it isn't just a novel, it's a confession to a grisly crime. And then there's some kind of game that's put into motion. So, okay, gonna pick up that one. And let's see here. Another book that I'm looking at picking up is one called Fellowship Point by Alice Elliott Dark. And it says this is about a celebrated children's book author who's determined to secure her legacy. And she's working on a final volume of her anonymously written novels. And let's see. She comes to this place in Maine known as Fellowship Point, and she needs to convince shareholders to dissolve a generations old partnership so she can donate the land to a trust. One of those shareholders is her best friend, Polly. And it says she's a well-off married woman with children defined by her devotion to her husband. And let's see, Polly soon finds her loyalties torn between the wishes of her best friend and the wishes of her 3 sons. But what is it that Polly wants herself? And then there's a young book editor named Maud who sets out to convince Agnes, the main character, to write her memoirs. So it sounds like all of these different points are kind of like coming together. a story of a couple of women in their 80s, and they have 80 years of summers kind of in their history. So I'm going to add that one to my list as well. That sounds like kind of like a sprawling fiction novel. All right, I just need one more, and I think I'm going to pick Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna, which was made into a television show. And I think it's just about kind of two women friends. I don't know much about this particular book. There's a couple books in this series actually, but let me take a look at what the first one is about. It says, turbulent summer of 1974. Kate has accepted her place at the bottom of the 8th grade social food chain, and then the coolest girl in the world moves across the street from her and wants to be her friend. She's Tully, and they are opposites on the surface, but then they become inseparable. And it spans more than 3 decades, playing out across the ever-changing face of the Pacific Northwest, a poignant, beautiful story of two women and the friendship that becomes the bulkhead of their lives. So I will add that to my list as well. So some really good books I'm looking forward to for the month of November. I hope you'll check back at the end of this month and see what I was able to get read. And until then, happy reading.